This is TWIS, This Week in Science, episode number 504, recorded on Wednesday, March 4th, 2015, Remote Control Fallout Proxy. Today, we'll fill your head with a smelly handshake, bumblebees, and tear-jerkers. But first...
Disclaimer, disclaimer, disclaimer. For tens of thousands of years, mankind wandered in darkness of night without sight, but for the light of the moon, light of the stars, and eventually, fire. Keeping some darkness away, but inviting shadows to dance at the back of the cave wall, fire ushered in mankind's mastery of nature. The shadows and the stars both told tales of greater things to come. Science was born. Yet just as our illumination began to reach further, push harder against the unseen, a dark age made monsters out of shadows and threw the future of humanity into coarsely crafted hellfire. The great uprising of the past 100 years has once again put science firmly in control of the future of humanity. The time of shadows and monsters is behind us. The moment in which we can do is now. March forth, minions of science, and see what wonders await you on the edges of discovery. March forth, minions of science, with the knowledge that propels spacecraft beyond our solar system and brings subatomic particles into view. March forth, minions of science, and receive the gift that thousands of years of hard work have gifted us here on This Week in Science. Coming up next.
I've got the kind of mind I can't get enough. I want to learn everything. I want to fill it all up with new discoveries that happen every day of the week. There's only one place to go to find the knowledge I seek. I want to know what's happening. What's happening? What's happening this week in science? What's happening? What's happening? What's happening this week in science?
Good science to you, Blair.
Good science to you, Justin. Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of This Week in Science. Kiki's not here today, just me and Justin, but I think we will make it.
Maybe.
Maybe. We have so much science news today. I brought some stories about cockroaches, about handshakes, and about rhinos. What did you bring, Justin?
I've got fattening movies, H5N1 cures, sex on the brain, and where penguins come from.
That's pretty exciting. All right, let's get into it, Justin. Which one do you want to start with?
Oh, none of those. One I didn't even mention, in fact.
Oh,
yeah.
Excellent. Bring it on.
Okay, so this is interesting. This is a study in mice, and what they were looking for was they were looking for basically underfed mice, malnourished mice. When they weren't looking for them, they were causing and creating this in the laboratory environment, and then studying their children. What they discovered, though, was that the offspring, even if they would give the initial one a malnutrition, they would have a child that you would think would be malnourished, and then that mouse would get pregnant. And then they would make sure all the feeding that was necessary, all the nutrients that were necessary were there while pregnant. And what they found was the grandchild, had much more metabolic issues, higher chances of cholesterol, diabetes, and obesity than even their parent, reflecting the events that took place in the grandmother. Now, we've had this. We've been finding this throughout history. We found this, I think it was is it a Swedish farm or Norwegian farmers study that they kept really, really good records of feast and famine times. And just by going back and looking at the farming records, we will be able to see that it was skipping a generation. A famine would then skip a generation in terms of having any sort of metabolic effects, and then the following generation would really get them. So it's really the grandchildren that inherit the effects of the environment from the grandparents, not the actual one before. But this is in a laboratory conditions with rats, showing that this is a reality. That not so much necessarily your own decisions about your health are going to be at play in determining whether you're battling obesity or diabetes or cholesterol. They'll have an impact, but perhaps not as big an impact as the life led by your grandparents. Specifically in this one, I guess it was the grandmother that they were tracing back the ailments to.
Right. So much like baldness, the malnutrition skips a generation. Is that the deal?
Yeah. Well, it's not the malnutrition. This is the thing. The future generation isn't in a time of famine, as the grandparents were. But for some reason, the effects of the famine 2 generations ago has lasting impact on a later generation unconnected to the conditions.
That's interesting. I guess, so if I was malnourished while I was making a baby, let's say, while it was cooking, that means that all of those pieces getting formed and put together, the genetics, everything about it is happening while I am malnourished. Then that's the equipment that begets the grandchildren.
Yeah, but somehow your children themselves manage to get by without the ill effects.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Right? It's almost like the building blocks that you're making kids with isn't yours or your parents, right? It's, oh no, is your, no, yeah, it just would be your parents.
So if you think, I'm thinking about it like, let's say I'm having a baby. I'm making the Legos, okay? And then the next generation is the one putting the Legos together to make something out of them, right? So that's how I see it, is that you're making the raw materials that will then be put together to make your grandchildren.
Yes. Not your children. Your children have nothing to do with you, apparently.
Your children are being made by the parts that my parents made.
Yeah.
So you think about the materials and then the final product. It's kind of 2 steps, right?
Right. So I guess to really learn about your own health, forget your parents' health. That's going to be useful in what's going on with your kids.
Don't forget your parents' health, but keep in mind the health of your grand.
But no, try to get your find out what killed off your grandparents. This is the thing. Or find out, actually, more importantly, less important than that, more importantly, what their childhood was.
Right. Because that's what this is about. It isn't about genetics. It's about environmental effects.
It's environmental effects that happen pre-puberty to your grandparents. Because that's when all this gets locked in. That's when the decisions of what the cascade of effects down the generations takes place before puberty.
Right. So there are some things that are affected purely by genetics. Some genetics are sex-linked. Some genetics are changed in other ways. Then there's mutation. Then there's environmental factors. These are all different things. So this is just this one specific thing talking about kind of environmental effects of nutrition. That apparently is something that takes 2 generations to show up. That's pretty cool. That's interesting. Nice. Do you wanna hear about a remote control cockroach?
Are you kidding me? Yes. Tell me more.
So, cockroaches. A Texas A&M study has found a way to control the path of cockroaches via wireless technology. So, mechanical engineers and entomologists teamed up to put little backpacks on the back of cockroaches with very tiny microcontrollers in them, a wireless receiver, and a battery. And then they inserted electrodes into the body of the test cockroach, into the pronotum. Entomologists, help me with the pronunciation, but it is basically it's the thoracic plate. It's the thorax plate on the bug, or on this cockroach in this case. And so they poked it through the plate, and then they tested the cockroach through their nervous system until they could kind of make the two talk to each other. And then by connecting the electrodes, they found that they could actually control the movement of the bug by stimulating either the right or the left side, kind of like reins on a horse. The approach is not perfect. It only works about 60% of the time. But they're saying that's enough because you can just kind of keep trying until it works, and then they turn, and then try it again on this side until it works, and then they turn. And so it was enough for them to be able to work it out. So first I want to show you a video, and then we can kind of talk about implications. But first I want to show you what it looks like, 'cause it's pretty funny trying to see them make this cockroach move. So here he is. So he's kind of wiggling around. For those of you listening who can't see it, if you go into our show notes on our website, TWIS.org, you can find the link to this story and you can look up this video. But essentially, imagine a square quadrant of a room, and they were trying to move from the lower right-hand corner to a yellow strip in the upper left-hand corner. And they actually ended up covering, I would say, 3/4 of the ground trying to swirl around to get this guy to go up into the yellow area. But they did it. They eventually got him there.
So this is just left and right control, though. This isn't This isn't forward. So the roach has to be deciding to okay. That was weird.
True.
I'm gonna walk home.
Except that by stimulating this side, you're making them go that way.
Wait,
so that
are you making them actually walk that way, or are you just making that the way that they walk? But they have to still be walking.
If you think about how a horse works and reins work on pull the reins, and the horse moves at all from the pulling of the reins, they don't just kind of turn their head. If the rein is working, they're going to move part of their body that way, and that creates movement. So they're still moving forward. It's just kind of it's hard to explain. You're not creating forward motion, but by stimulating one side or the other, you're creating motion, which in itself makes forward motion.
Okay, maybe. I'm not. Well, no. What I'm saying is, I'm not sure. Like, do the researchers get to decide? Do they have like a giddy up to get the cockroach to start going in motion, or do they have to sit there and wait till the cockroach starts walking before okay, make it go left. Make it go left. Oh, okay, make it go right.
The cockroach has 6 legs. It doesn't rotate like we do because we're bipedal, right? We can just kind of pivot when we move. But because they have 6 legs, if they're moving these front legs, they're moving. There's movement in a forward direction, no matter what. Essentially, they got them to move the way that what they wanted. But by doing that, that's part of why it was so curly cute in the video as well. The point is, they could then take these cockroaches or something else, maybe mice or rats, and they could send them somewhere that humans can't go, potentially with a tiny camera on it or something like that, or sensors maybe if it was after, let's say, a nuclear fallout or some sort of biological warfare. You could send these guys out and test out an area, figure stuff out where we can't get to. Maybe there's an earthquake and a building collapses and there are no holes larger than where a rat could fit in. You could get that in there. Right? So there's lots of different ways you could use this. I'm not convinced it's better than just robots. But also, then, where do you draw the line? Right? Until you start controlling dogs, and then you start controlling monkeys, and then the obvious science fiction conclusion to draw, which is humans.
Well, I don't know. I think we're so adept at controlling humans at this point. I don't know. I don't know if we need to take over their motor functions. We have other triggers for human beings to get them. Some segment of people somewhere we can get to do anything. This has, I think, been proven at this point. So no, I think the highest best use probably is more what you're saying. Rescue mice. Being able to stimulate it to go in one direction versus the other, a little bit above and beyond just simple training.
Right.
Training it to take those cues like a horse does, to go left, to go right. See something interesting over there? You want to go over here, go over there.
A horse is not being trained to react to reins. It's being trained to not ignore them, but what it's doing is moving their head, and they're following their head with their body. That's not, you don't train a horse, when I pull this way, you turn right.
I think you do.
You
Yeah.
train a horse to not resist. You train a horse to not throw you off of them. But it's a motor function. Like if you've ever had, or maybe one of your friends has had a dog, and they put on something called a gentle leader to keep them from pulling. That's what's happening. By them turning their head, they're turning their whole body. They're turning their movement of their body. That's what it is.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know. As I recall from, and I haven't been on a horse. I fell off a horse one time. Never got back on again. But as I recall, as from my youth of riding horses, this was that it was just sort of a subtle, like you weren't turning the horse's head, you weren't yanking the reins.
So over
You were just like
time,
this way, and this wasn't even. These weren't even. And actually, maybe more to your point, maybe that was just enough, because these horses were.
when you're first
Nevada Bureau of Land Management relocation Mustangs that my uncle broke. I'm doing quotation marks because these horses were still bucking us off and rubbing us off on trees as kids. They were they were not broken. They were not trained. They were wild horses, but they still did. They still did respond pretty easily.
So
to
yeah,
the
so
reins.
over time, when you're training a horse, it gets to the point where you can just give them a little, and they know what that means. But when you're dealing with a wild animal, for example, which I have done many times, if you turn their head in the right direction, they turn their body in that direction. And their entire body movement goes in that direction. A lot of animals, especially quadrupedal animals, just follow their head. So it's
Well, that's a good thing. Can you imagine if animals their bodies were trying to go one way and their heads were going another? That would be a mess.
So anyway, the cockroaches' point is we so far very rudimentary control over them to get them where we want them to go. There is a little concern that they could start to acclimatize to it, and they could start to ignore the stimulation from the electrodes, but Texas A&M researchers are actually not that concerned about that. They think that it'd be pretty lasting. So next step, they're trying to put electrodes outside the body so that they wouldn't need to implant anything inside the cockroach. They could just kind of throw this backpack on them and they'd be good to go. So that's hopefully we'll have some exciting news in the world of remote-controlled insects pretty soon. All right, if you've just tuned in, you're listening to This Week in Science with usually Dr. Kiki, Justin, and Blair. This week it's just Justin and Blair. Justin, what else you got?
Ba-doop, ba-doop, ba-doop. This just in. Penguins. Penguins. Do you know where penguins come from?
The Southern Hemisphere.
Yes, but more specifically, where do most penguins come from historically? Just
They
say
come.
Antarctica. Just
That's
say
not true, though. There's only 2 species down there.
Okay, I'm sorry. Oh, where do emperor penguins come from?
Oh, Antarctica.
There we go.
Yeah.
Right answer. Okay, so one of the things looking back, though, it's sort of puzzling about the penguins in Antarctica is that there was a time, some 30,000 years ago, where the conditions would have been so harsh in Antarctica that even the robust, winter-loving penguins of today would not have survived. So where did they go, and where are they now? Well, it looks like they've narrowed down. They figured most penguins the penguins had pre-existed before this ice age 30,000 years ago in Antarctica. But they believe that most of the populations had died off. And there are 3 distinct populations that are there now. One is very distinct from the others, and in that particular population, that's been in, I guess it's the Ross Sea. They find that the conditions around the Ross Sea may have been the one location where these penguins were able to survive the Ice Age, just because of sort of the way it's situated. One population may have existed there through an Ice Age and continues largely to exist there today.
Nice. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little hideout for the penguins. All right. Speaking of penguins, I think it's time for...
She loves our creatures, great and small. Biped, millipede, no pet at all. You want to hear about animals? She's your girl. Except for giant pandas and squirrels. Those animals.
What you got, Blair? Did you bring some animal stories? Have you got animal stories?
No, not this week. No animal stories.
Oh, all right.
Just kidding.
Moving right along.
Okay. I have a couple really interesting things. First thing is about bumblebees. Bumblebees, pretty smart animals. As we know, they have a complex social structure. They have pretty good memory, and they're very good at communicating to each other where food is, where the best flowers are, where the nest might be, all that kind of stuff. And now it looks like they might also have memory problems, just like us.
What?
So we can be forgetful, but we can also remember things incorrectly. Sometimes that can cause problems for us if we end up with false memories. But now this is the first time ever we have found false memories, or the potential of false memories, in a non-human. And it's bumblebees. So that would be, we're looking with this, in this case with the bumblebees, where two memories converge, where they kind of blend together in the brain, which happens to us a lot. And in order to figure out if this was happening, they saw in some studies, in over 20 years of looking at bumblebees and memory and learning, they saw things that looked like forgetfulness. But one researcher wanted to look a little bit closer in the University of London. And so she designed a very special experiment to test exactly what kind of memory malfunction was going on. So first, the bumblebees were trained to expect a reward when visiting a solid yellow artificial flower, and then later a black and white ringed flower. Then in later tests, bees were given a choice between three types of flowers. Two were yellow, or one was yellow, one was black and white, like they had seen before, and then the third type had yellow and white rings, representing a mixture of the two. So minutes after training, they were very good at going for the flower that most recently rewarded them. So their short-term memory was excellent. Then 1 or 3 days later, they saw a change. At first, the bees showed the same preference, but as the day went on, they got confused. The bees got confused. Half the time, they selected the flower with the yellow rings, even though they had never seen it in training before. And so this looks like a merging of long-term memories, and it's similar to what we call memory conjunction errors that we make.
Was it? I wonder if it was all of them or just some of them.
What do you mean?
Well, like some of
bees?
them, or were they all getting the memory confusion?
So 50% of them got confused.
Aha.
So,
So this is the golden white dress versus the black and blue.
No,
dress,
that has nothing
right?
to do with this.
Like, no, that's the one. No, that one's not the right flower. It looks exactly like that flower.
Okay.
No, it doesn't. This is
So hold on, because that's totally different. So that has to do with context clues, and that has to do with how your brain creates context, the dress, which we don't have to go into because it's all over the internet. This is about a memory mix which happens also in humans, but not across the board, similarly to how it didn't happen across the board with bees. And this is the part where it gets really interesting. It turns out that the ability to memorize principles of a bunch of different events and mix the rules involved actually helps an individual respond to new situations. And so this could actually be a beneficial thing for an animal in a changing environment. And so they could be helpful if you're in a place that's changing all the time, but it could come at the expense of remembering everything correctly over a long period of time. So this has to do with limited brain capacity, the pressure to economize by storing overarching principles together. So this is actually something that they see in humans too, that are, for example, okay, so people who are particularly good at learning rules to classify objects are also especially prone to false memory illusions.
Really?
Yes. So that's part of that, is finding overarching themes, packaging them together, kind of to save space, I guess, in the brain, and make it faster to figure out these things. As a result, that can mess up your memory a little bit.
So if I'm really bad at categorizing stuff, does that make my memory better?
It probably doesn't work backwards the other way.
Well, it has to. Wait a second. It has to.
No, because because you could just have a bad memory. Also,
right, okay.
That's separate.
But I mean, my chances, if they have an increased chance of having a false memory, couldn't you? Then is it, if I have the same chance of a false memory and I don't categorize well, then it doesn't matter that they categorize well.
Justin, you know backwards logic often doesn't work.
What?
It often doesn't work.
Well, wait a second, though.
You've been on a science
Otherwise,
podcast
how could you
how
say
long?
that they are more prone to having a false memory because they're good categorizers, whereas somebody who doesn't categorize well would then have less of a chance?
That's backwards logic. You know backwards logic doesn't work. You know that.
I don't know that. I'm sticking to this.
Because you can just have a bad memory.
Oh, well, yeah, certainly anybody could have a bad memory. But that withstanding, I'm saying being a bad categorizer.
Yeah, you don't know that. That has those two things are totally unrelated.
Or less of a chance of having a false memory.
Those are totally unrelated. Sorry. It's just because these two things are related, that doesn't mean the opposite of the two things are also related. That's just,
I think it has to be.
No. That's not how logic works. Sorry. Anyway,
it has to be.
Moving on. I have one more story. It's actually kind of a fun, good news, heartwarming story. I'm excited. New genetic technologies could help us save some critically endangered species. So I actually had some people talking to me. I think it was in the chat room last week, and then also I had some Twitter conversations with people about why we would keep animals and animal specimens for the future. And so we do that. There's something called the Frozen Zoo, which is kind of a collection of biological specimens of all sorts of endangered species and threatened species. And now geneticists at San Diego Zoo Institute for Conservation Research are starting to figure out how to use cryopreserved cells to bring back one critically endangered species, the northern white rhino. And so these living cells in the Frozen Zoo, they have 12 northern white rhino specimens, including the male that passed away recently at the safari park. There was a really interesting story about when the rhino died. Someone I think it was in the middle of the night, rushed out to grab some cells before it was too late to throw into the Frozen Zoo. And so there's these 12 different genetic specimens. And so they think now, pretty soon, they may be able to, first of all, use that to figure out the genetics of all these different rhinos, along with the very few rhinos left in captivity, to be able to kind of come up with a best case scenario of which ones to combine to make the most genetically viable offspring. And then, this is the really great part, they think now they will be able to, after they sequence the genomes and figure out all of these relatives and the best family tree to come, they'll be able to reprogram the cells, have them go back to the stem cell state to then turn them into egg and or sperm, then turn them into essentially rhino test tube babies, implant a rhino. It would be great if it was the same species, but potentially it could be a different rhino species that could incubate, and then they could keep these guys going. It's pretty cool.
But should we do that?
Well, only if, right? This is the part that's kind of editorializing.
Mm-hmm.
In my opinion, I think it's important to keep it around in the hopes that we will at some point have space for them. Because that's really the question. Will there be a space that these animals can roam where they won't be poached and where they'll be protected and where there's enough space for them and all this kind of stuff, which is a lot of ifs. But I personally am hopeful that at some point we will have space for these guys.
Rhinos on the moon.
Or people on the moon so that there's room for rhinos here on Earth.
Yeah, all the people to the moon. Plenty of space. No, I think the moon is a wildlife refuge. It'd be fine. But this is like my desire to bring back the mastodon, right? Or the woolly mammoth.
Totally different. Totally different. That is an environmental caused extinction.
What, 10,000 years?
That's totally different. Woolly mammoth is gone because it's not cold enough for them anymore. The rhino is gone because we killed them all. Those are two very different reasons. The rhino could survive today
Dodo bird?
just fine.
Dodo?
Yeah, sure, why not?
Okay. Neanderthal?
Well,
Huh?
that's a whole different thing.
Why is that different?
Because what would you do with the Neanderthal? Would they
What
be
would you do with the dodo?
integrated
or the
into
rhino?
society as a humanoid, or what? Where would they go? This is the question. Once again, if there's not a space for them,
what if they're just as intelligent as us? And it was just back then we were both a little primitive in our understanding and ability to communicate. What if they're just as intelligent? That is another story. We can argue about that at a different time. Hey, are we at the break?
Yes, hold on. I'm doing too many things. All right. Stay tuned for more This Week in Science coming up soon.
Things you heard with more than intuition. A line of reason shows the way to go. No conclusion. The methods of hypothesis and patience are the only things I need. Put on a pair of goggles and go looking for the I couldn't see.
Hey everybody, did you know that TWIS has merchandise that you may enjoy? Head over to TWIS.org to buy some of our swag. We have a link on our website that goes directly to our Zazzle store. We have all sorts of cool stuff on there. Mugs, aprons, hats, etc. So go to TWIS.org and click on the Zazzle store link in the menu to start buying now. TWIS is supported by listeners like you. Your donations pay for our hosting, bandwidth, contractors we need to hire, and fun things we try to do for the show. We appreciate any amount, $2, $5, $10, $100. You make this show possible. We currently accept donations a couple of ways. First, we have PayPal donation buttons on each show page on our website, twis.org, or we have started a Patreon account at patreon.com/thisweekinscience. It's kind of like Kickstarter for media producers. You can get stuff in return for your donation, and you pay per content produced. So for us, it's our episodes per episode produced. Whichever your preference, go to the website, listen to the most recent episode, comment on the show, and make a donation. Can't afford a donation? We can always use your help to get more people listening to and watching TWIS. Use your social networks for science and tell people to tune into TWIS. If each of you think about maybe just 3 or 4 or 5 of your friends, tell them about TWIS. We want to spread the science far and wide, so help us out. Tell them all about us. Tell them your favorite things. Send them your favorite show. Send them a few tweets, perhaps, from @TWISScience or from any of us. And tell them to tune in. Tell them to watch, tell them to listen, whatever you can do. We want enough people listening to this show so we can make science accessible to everyone. Let's bring everyone to the TWIS Minion Circle. Let's make all of them This Week in Science listeners. Thanks so much for your support, guys. We could not do it without you.
Fly somewhere within this scattered plot. First assumption.
And we're back with more This Week in Science.
What do you got, Justin?
What do I got? Hey, do you ever go to a sad movie? Go to a tearjerker?
Not often, but I will sometimes.
Chick flick. Right?
I mean, yeah, sometimes.
This is some sort of interesting study. This is published in the JAMA Internal Medicine Research Letter. It says that moviegoers ate 28% more popcorn when watching the tragedy love story than watching the comedy Sweet Home Alabama.
Are we sure they didn't just walk out of Sweet Home Alabama?
So you know what? There's a potential there. So this is basically a dumpster diver research project. They went through and they were measuring amounts of popcorn left in discarded popcorn containers in 7 cities across the United States. And it showed us similar results over the Thanksgiving weekend. After weighing discarded popcorn and counting popcorn boxes, this is Cornell Food and Brand Lab researchers found that moviegoers who bought popcorn and watched a sad movie, in this case it was Solaris, ate an average of 55% more popcorn than those watching the upbeat movie My Big Fat Greek Wedding. So they did more than one movie. They did more than one movie to get this. One was 28% more. One was 55% more.
Yeah. So I was reading this earlier today, and I was talking to some people on Twitter about it, actually. So a couple things. So the 22% one, that was actually, I think it was a study in a lab, right? And then the 55% was a dumpster diving thing, which is interesting. I mean, I bet there are better scientific practices than dumpster diving. It's an interesting way to go, but also, to a certain extent, in the theater at least, your subjects are self-selecting, right? So they're not sending certain people to certain movies. Right. It might just be that if you went to that sad movie, you wanted to eat more. People who go to sad movies eat more.
Already, yeah, right. Some sort of pre-existing psychological condition that makes you want to consume on an emotional basis, seeks out also the emotional-based movie. You have that emotional movie, the emotional eater, eating emotionally during the emotional movie, self-selecting respondents. Yes, I think you're correct.
It's certainly possible. But it's interesting. I do think that they said in the study, too, that it appeared like you're likely to eat more of whatever's in front of you. So if you really need to eat your vegetables,
Bring them
sit
to a
down
sad
to a
movie.
sad movie and just
Well-
put nothing but carrots in front of you.
Well, here's the other thing. I think this is fantastic market research for theaters. Having worked for a very short period of time behind the counter of a movie theater, I was amazed to learn how little the movie theater gets of that ticket price.
Right.
That box office ticket price, they get a minuscule markup on the cost of seeing the movie, and the real money comes into the theater at the concession stand. That's where they get paid. So now I can picture like sad movies being on the bill, 6 weeks, and that comedy having a quick 2-week run and getting cycled out for another sad movie.
But didn't you say something in there too about action films that people ate at the pace of the film or something like that? That they were affected by the action film somehow as well.
Oh, I don't have that in my version of the story.
Oh. Yeah, I'll have to check for later. But it's very interesting.
I can tell you my experience. My children would be a terrible example for this study because they chow down like hogs at a trough at any movie that I've ever taken them to. They do. We have to get like the extra large bottomless well popcorn that you can go and refill as many times as your arteries can handle, because they're all little popcorn vampires.
Here we go. With action movies, people seem to eat to the pace of the movie. But movies can also generate emotional eating, and people may eat to compensate for sadness.
Aww.
Yeah. So the action-adventure movies also led viewers to eat more calories, but only if the foods are within arm's reach. Nice. Awesome.
Hey, Blair.
Yes.
Do you think people are eating to this show?
I mean, it sure is fast-paced and intense.
It's like so all of a sudden we start talking fast. Does that mean people are going to start reaching for more food?
Oh, yeah.
Or if we start telling a sad story, are people eating more? I don't know. I don't think this is a show you eat to. At least I don't. I think this is a show you drink to.
Well, they didn't test it on documentaries either, so they were only looking at fiction, Yeah.
I bet people are sipping their coffees more aggressively while listening to the show.
Yes, definitely. Hey, do you ever shake people's hands when you meet them?
Oh, constantly. Yes.
Constantly, I know.
I would prefer, like, if I know them. Here's the thing. Actually, this is something I thought through very well. If I know them well enough, I just try to do the fist bump because I don't like that much hand-on-hand contact. But when it's a stranger, you're sort of obliged to do the full handshake. You can't just fist bump a stranger. It's socially awkward. You don't know where they're coming from yet. So it turns into this handshake, and you got to share all your bacteria with each other.
So let me ask you this question: what is the dog version of a handshake?
Okay, my guess is gonna be toasted Cheerio sniffing.
Yes, the posterior sniff is the equivalent.
Is that the scientific terminology?
I just made it up.
I was reaching for it. I was looking for it. There was a pause where I was trying to find, how do you say this?
I made it up. So it turns out they're more equivalent than we thought before. Basically not because the butt sniff is the equivalent of the handshake, it's that the human handshake is the equivalent of the butt sniff. You are shaking someone's hand to smell them out. So I love this study. This was published in the journal eLife from Israel's Weizmann Institute of Science. They found that people use the touch of a handshake to sample and sniff signaling molecules on the person they're meeting. So in the experiment, they had 280 people. They were greeted either with or without a handshake, and then they were filmed using hidden cameras, and they were observed to see how many times they touched their face. Over the finding of the study, they found that they are constantly sniffing their own hands in general. people just are constantly smelling their own hands. Now I have to kind of pay attention the rest of tonight and tomorrow, but apparently we are constantly smelling our own hands. We keep our hands at our nose about 22% of the time. Now, on top of that, subjects greeted with a handshake significantly increased the touching of their faces with their right hand. But it was only the case when the subject had been greeted by a person of the same gender. And so now to check, because you could say, well, maybe they were just itchy, right? Maybe they're just nervous. There could be a million reasons that you would touch your face. Well, to make sure it had to do with sniffing, the subjects were fitted with nasal catheters to measure airflow. And they found that when the hand was in close proximity to the nose, airflow through the nasal passages doubled.
Wow.
So they were definitely sniffing.
Are you sure it wasn't because they were just going like, there's this thing in my nose. I got a nasal catheter. It's irritating. I just want to play with it or pull it out or something.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that wasn't it. Yep. Mm-hmm.
So and I wonder like for my own perspective, like I don't think that I do this, and of course, probably getting a nasal catheter and some hidden video, I'd find myself doing this much more frequently than I thought. Yet, I don't have for various reasons, which we don't need to ever discuss, I don't have a good sense of smell. I have almost no sense of smell. So I wonder if I would not do this just because there would be no benefit to it.
That's a very good question. That would be an interesting thing to look at. But what they did find out is that the molecules squalene and hexadecanoic acid, both of those chemicals they play a very vital role in social signaling in dogs and rats. And all of those things were transferred onto gloves when they had to do the same experiment with the handshaking where someone had a glove on. All of those things ended up on the glove, these chemical signals that are all about social interactions in these other mammals. And so in previous studies, they actually found related human chemo signals that play a role in mate selection, in fear, in brain activity, and in synchronizing women's menstrual cycles. Yeah. So the easiest explanation here is that we started shaking hands a long time ago, and we did it essentially to smell each other out in the doggy how do you do. So it's definitely subliminal, but it looks like that's what's going on, is we're smelling each other. Only people of the same sex, though, when we shake hands, which now means I have to watch myself so closely next time I shake someone's hand.
Yeah. That's just weird. Well, although I'm very thankful for the fact we've got this subliminal, civilized way of sniffing each other out.
I say.
No, what if you just did it really obviously? Like if you didn't do it subliminally, like if you shook somebody's hand and went,
I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go.
Okay. All right. We're good. New review looks at how the brain impacts the sequence of physical and emotional changes that occur when a person participates in sexually stimulating activities. So the experts in this study note that the cerebral cortex region of the brain is involved in all three phases of sexual pleasure cycles: wanting sex, having sex, and even in inhibiting sex. And each of these phases depends on distinct networks within the brain. It's also clear that alterations in these brain networks are associated with sexual dysfunction. For all of its primitive functions, human sex draws heavily on the functionality of the part of the brain that has evolved most recently, the cerebral cortex. And this is we'd really like to have Dr. Kiki here to tell us more about the cerebral cortex.
Yep.
But this is that was a quote by not the Dr. Kiki part, but the rest was a quote by Dr. Janiko Georgakis, lead author of the Clinical Anatomy Review. and talk to her this way. So, but it does sort of explain why sex is so hijacked, why we aren't such primitive sexual beasts, why we have some level of ability to control our sexuality, that it is in a part of the brain that is more recently evolved and perhaps more of our choosing or more of our rational, modern-esque humanoid brain.
All right. Cool.
Maybe. Or maybe not.
Yeah.
There's a new compound they found that protects 100% of ferrets and mice from H5N1.
Oh.
Bird
Ferrets
flu.
and mice?
Ferrets and mice are protected now from bird flu. So if the Birdmageddon pandemic-y flu virus H5N1 does jump over to humans and wipe us all out, we have a way to maintain a future of ferret and mice.
That's awesome. Good news.
Yeah, hopefully it can work in humans too, if and when or if that ever becomes necessary.
The choice of using ferrets seems interesting to me. That's kind of random. Anyway, you got anything else?
Nope.
I have one last one. So we know that extreme weather probably would affect birds in the moment, right? That it would hurt them by making it harder for them to find food. It could cause physical damage to them, specifically feathers could get messed up from extreme weather. Well, it turns out it affects the feathers a lot more than that. It actually changes the way the feathers grow, and they found a phenomenon called pallid bands in large proportion on these fledgling grasshopper sparrows where there were also extreme weather events, and that led to abnormalities in new feathers. So that means these extreme weather events not only affects them in the moment, but affects them in the long term and their ability to grow proper feathers. And we know it's not a very successful bird without successful feathers, so that's pretty important. They haven't figured out why exactly yet. It could be stress, it could be other environmental factors, but it's just another way that birds, who are super important to so many habitats, are being affected by the extreme weather coming from other issues. So that's what I got. All right. Well, it appears to be that time. Let's make some shout outs right now to our donors on Patreon. I am loading that up right now. We have so many. We have 200 patrons now. I don't think we're going to read them all.
No, this is part of the gig, Blair. This is why they've donated. They're going to have their names read out this time.
I'm going to read all 200 patrons right now. Are you ready?
Yes.
Richard O'Nemus, Michael Traynor, Logan Waterman, Saul Good, Sam, Matt Sutter, Katie Volk, Miranda McKennett, Jean Marie Arundel, and Vardas Rimkus, Tom Sisko, Control Alt Jack, Robert Michael, Peter Chow, Frederick Peterson, Nicholas Sanders, Nicholas Lai, Corey Addy, Brian Rossman, Philip Shane, Greg Guthman, Emma Granier, Caleb Smith, Gerald Sarles, Julie Roberts, Rick Ramos. Come on, Internet. Not wanting to load more names.
These are new people. I haven't heard them before.
Yes.
Come on.
Here we
Internet.
go. Michael Segelhorst, David, James Dobson, Steve Goodwin, Larry, Sam Korn, Kurt Larson, Michelangelo Grigny, Stefan Insam, Michael George, Russell Tammany, Brian Hendrick, Robert Swain, Richard Bowersox, Russell Jensen, Mountain Sloth, Cassie Lester, Jim Drapeau, CR1, Bird Eyes, Kurt Hindenburg, Darren Lute, Paul Perdomo, Bruce Cordell, Chad Dinerman, Chris Cross, Patrick Cohn, Blueprint Earth, Brian Hopkins, Alex Piskarev, Gal Goldschmidt, Mike Smith, Edwin Roses, Sarah Chavez, Jake Jones, Alex Wilson, Thomas, Doug Thompson, Sam Winsier, Daryl Lambert, Leon, John Ratnaswamy, Steve Heitstend, Samson Spouse, David Skies, Nick, John H. Maloney, Sue Doster, Y. Gorin, Tara Payne, Lord Trentonian Moody, Dave Neighbor, James, Paul West, John Anderson, Lauren Lang, Christopher Adhuck, Ed Bennett, Rudy Garcia, Colby King, Allie Smith, Thomas McQueenan, Illuma Lama, James J. Roscos, Michael Waldron, J. David Barger, Chris Smith, Joe Wheeler, Jason Dozier, Ryan Ewan, Alec Doherty, Noah Wiles, Anthony Leonard Perez, Jason Olds, Jillian Eklund, William Lozano, Nick Gradwell, Louis Zampini, Eric Knapp, Swedish Topiary, Jurgen Stillingwerf, Justin Higgins, Kevin Donald Wesley Ballard, Kimberly Herbert, Byron Lee, Magnus, Zach, Jesper Nielsen, Lon Koenig, TMRO, Mike Hellers, Lorenzo Flores, John Bates, Patrick Nadow, EO, Lane R., Russell Brown, Matthew Litwin, Tonda Gassa, Miko Pacola, Tom Merritt, Ken Meyer, Craig Porter, Alex, Anastasia Serfas, John Mottram, Network Presence, Viet Tom Liu, Jason Cox, Aaron Luthan, Doug Kleeman, Kirk Stephenson, Steve Daybell, Vince Dragomats, Dave Vaughn, Bob Calder, Trinity Berger, Shane and Tara Ginsburg, Terry Winters, Layla, Marjorie, Adam Mishkan, Brian Smith, Paul D. Disney, Paul Stanton, Anthony, Scott Lejewski, David Simmerly, Robert O. Davis, Don Komarechka, Dan, Larry Garcia, Ben Rothig, Randy Mazuka, Jared Lysett, Aurora Lee, Columbo Ahmed, Ed Dyer, Gary Swinsberg, Tony Steele, Andreas Oxtad, Eric Scotch, Ulysses Adkins, Tyler Harrison, Patrick Pecoraro, Charlene David Hendry, Marshall Clark, Paul Anderson, Brian Condren, David Friedel, Jason Roberts, Gord McLeod. Gord McLeod is what I meant to say. Of course, I know Gord. That's actually everybody that donates to This Week in Science. Normally, we only read a certain level and up, but I don't have the login information. So everyone got a shout out today. Very exciting.
While all of you may be regretting your donation after tonight's show, we still thank you for support on Patreon. If you're interested in supporting us, you can find more information at patreon.com/This Week in Science. Also remember that you can help us out by simply telling your friends about TWIS. On next week's show, once again, we will be broadcasting live online 8 p.m. Pacific Time on twis.org/live, where you can join our chat room, but don't worry if you can't make it. You can find our past episodes on YouTube, This Week in Science, or twis.org. Thank you, everybody, for listening to the show. We're also, as I said, available as a podcast.
That's right.
Just Google us in the iTunes directory. Or if you have a mobile thingy, you can look for TWIS for Droid in the Android Marketplace, or This Week in Science in the Apple Marketplace, or This Week in Science in the iPhone podcast application thingy.
And on the Apple TV YouTube app. For more information on anything you've heard here today, show notes will be available on our website. That's www.twis.org. That's twis.org, where you can also make comments and start conversations with the hosts and other listeners. It's also a great place to look at the articles that we talked about and some of those videos that we were talking about earlier today.
Yeah. Or you can contact us directly. Email Kirsten at thisweekinscience.com, Justin at twistminion@gmail.com, or Blair at blairbaz@twis.org. Just be sure to put TWIS, TWIS, somewhere in the subject line, or your email will be spam filtered into oblivion. You can also hit us up on the Twitter, where we are at TWIScience, at Dr. Kiki, at JacksonFly, and at Blair's Menagerie. We love your feedback. If there's a topic you would like us to cover or address, a suggestion for an interview, a haiku that came to you in the night, please let us know.
We'll be back here next week, and we hope you'll join us again for some more great science news.
And if you've learned anything from today's show, remember,
it's all in your head.
Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science, it's the end of the world, so I'm setting up shop. Got my banner unfurled. It says the scientist is in. I'm gonna sell my advice. Show them how to stop the robots with a simple device. I'll reverse global warming with a wave of my hand, and all it'll cost you is a couple of grand. This week's science is coming your way, so everybody listen to what I say. I use the scientific method for all that it's worth, and I'll broadcast my opinion all over the earth. Cause it's This Week in Science, This Week in Science, This Week in Science, 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 This Week in Science, This Week in Science, This Week in Science, 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 Science. I've got one disclaimer and it shouldn't be news, that what I say may not represent your views, but I've done the calculations and I've got a plan. If you listen to the science, you may just not understand that we're not trying to threaten your philosophy. We're just trying to save the world from jeopardy. Jeopardy, jeopardy. And This Week in Science is coming your way, so everybody listen to everything we say. And if you use our method instead of rolling a die, we may rid the world of toxoplasma. Got the eye. Cause it's This Week in Science, This Week in Science, This Week in Science, 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 This Week in Science, This Week in Science, This Week in Science, 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 I've got a laundry list of items I want to address, from stopping global hunger to dredging Loch Ness. I'm trying to promote more rational thought, and I'll try to answer any question you've got. But how can I ever see the changes I seek when I can only set up shop 1 hour a week? This Week in Science is coming your way. You better just listen to what we say, and if you learned anything from the words that we said, then please just remember it's all in your head. Cause it's This Week in Science, This Week in Science, This Week in Science, 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 This Week in Science, This Week in Science, This Week in Science, 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 This Week in 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 Science.
Hey everybody. Hey all my buddies. So while we're waiting for Justin to come back, I'm going to see what's happening in the chat room here. Yeah, that was a long list of names. I didn't have the login to Patreon, so everybody got a shout out. Oh my goodness. And that was, yeah, I probably could have brought more stories, but I figured we could keep it to a tight hour this week. So that's good. On Patreon, we're up to $527.73. That's pretty awesome, guys. My goodness. We have 200 patrons even. Also, I wanted to check out my Twitter. I hit 600 followers today. What crash ending? What, Steve Everett? What are you talking about? I don't think it was the shortest TWIS ever, Janiscu. We just had to keep it, we're trying to keep it to an hour. And there were 2 of us, and I couldn't talk about neurons for 20 minutes, so I could not extend that story very much. So we were done. It was good. Thanks, Gorge. I'd like more followers than 600, but I'll take 600 for now. So, let's see. So we have... What else is happening? Thanks, Ben. I'd like more than 600. Hello, Justin.
Hello, Blair.
Oh my god. Is that what you were trying to do to me earlier when you kept asking me, but my voice is just normal?
Yeah, this is exactly.
Okay, so that's totally unintelligible. Just so you know. It just sounds like robot sound.
It's unintelligible.
I still can't understand the words that you're saying.
Okay, so this is... Hang on, I'm trying to get this thing to work. Check. Is it coming through now?
Oh my god.
You understand me now?
Now you can hear me.
Ugh,
This is from now on the show. I'm going to be Robot Justin.
I don't like that at all.
By your command.
By your command.
Oh man. Oh man.
Okay, so...
Oh, don't do that. That's painful. That hurts.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, that's the best one so far.
In the future.
But you can't really understand what you're saying in almost any of them.
You don't understand what I'm saying?
That's
Okay.
Swaggers, it was the same bees. So they trained the bees. They had good short-term memory. Then they went away and came back a few days later. And then they tried, they saw what happened. And that's when it happened. So it was a short-term versus long-term thing. To answer this question in the chat. So.
Okay. So half of all the bees, they were the same bees that they remembered everything the first day.
Right.
And then like day 2, day 3, what have you. That's when they started losing their memory.
So right now you sound like a reporter in the field.
This just in.
Yeah, exactly. So let's see, what else is interesting? Oh, I guess this is as good a time as any to announce. But Kiki's not here. But I'll do it anyway.
Oh
She
my
knows
gosh,
already.
you're getting married.
No.
You're getting married.
No.
That's not it?
No.
Oh.
I have a new job.
What?
Yeah.
What is this new job?
I'll be back at the zoo.
Yay! Good job, Blair.
Yeah, so I'm gonna work at a zoo again, guys.
What are you going to be doing at the zoo?
I'm going to be working in the education department. So I'll be running a newish program that has to do with hour-long tours in the zoo, and then I'll also be helping with all of the other education programs too. So I'll be working with animals a little bit. Most of it will be education, but I'll be working with some animals. So The Twitterverse will get a sudden surge of pictures of animals again from the zoo, which I'm pretty excited about because either I'll be working hands-on with them or I'll be walking around the zoo showing them to people. So
I'm so happy for you.
I'm pretty excited. I'm really sad to leave my current job, but I
know you were happy at the. Hang on a second. I've got too much feedback here. I know you were happy at the aquarium.
yes, and I loved my job and I loved my program.
Yeah.
But it is time.
You are an animal interaction person, and there's only so much interaction you can have with fish.
True.
You're a very hands-on.
Yeah, I miss the hands-on for sure.
Yeah.
And I miss my terrestrial animals. Yeah.
You're vertebrates.
Yeah. So that'll be good. I'm starting on Saturday. So.
So, because we missed you at the aquarium, but we'll come. I'll gather up my little people.
Okay, so I don't get quite the perks that I did when I was a zookeeper because I don't have direct access to the animals. But well, we'll talk.
I still get a tour. Like have somebody who can tell me about the animals.
Of course. Of course. Yeah, it'll be good. But I'm still working at the aquarium a little bit because I want to make sure that the Baymobile is well taken care of. So I'll be there for a little while still. But I'm starting at the zoo on Saturday.
Nice.
Yes. Panoramic. Yes, I left the zoo about 2 years ago. I've been at the aquarium. And now I'm going back. Yeah. So, it's on to the next journey.
Steve Everett says the planet's first vertebrate fossil was recently discovered. What?
Let's look at this. First vertebrate fossil.
All right, chat room, what do you prefer? This regular, boring Justin, who you've always heard, or Cylon Justin? I already know the answer. Nobody's responded, but I'm going to switch over.
Steve Everett, can I have a link, please? Because I can't find this. Yeah, I'm not seeing first vertebrate fossil. I'm not finding that.
The first vertebrate was from Battlestar.
I don't like any part of that. Okay. Let's see. What else is new? What else? Justin?
Are you asking me?
Oh, I never opened Q&A. I wonder if anyone was in there.
I don't know how to do the Q&A part.
Well, it doesn't wanna. Oh, there we go. Oh, okay, good. Nobody did any. Excellent. All right.
Okay, in the cavern.
Okay.
We are working together.
Good one, CR1. Very nice. Here's the link. Okay, let's look at this link. Okay. Jawbone discovered in Ethiopia is the oldest known. Oh, human lineage, not vertebrate. What's this? This is separate.
The humans are.
There we go. Fossils reveal oldest known vertebrate live birth. Okay, so that's different. See. Yeah, okay, so you guys are funny. Okay, so some of you sent me first vertebrate live birth. That's already last month that happened. Did we talk about this on the show? I can't remember. A 248 million year old ichthyosaur with embryos inside. Oh. Yeah, I think we did. I think we talked about that. And then just today, I think, is when this broke, and this is the oldest known human lineage, around 400,000 years older than previously thought. So, let's see. 2.8 million year old jaw. Cool. In Ethiopia, the oldest remains ever found that belonged to genus Homo. Nice. Nope, can't understand any of that. Oh, this is David Attenborough telling me. Mm-hmm. All right. Yep. Mm-hmm. All right.
Okay.
Okay, so I
My
think
new voice transformer toy I got for radio show stuff, or for radio theater stuff.
what?
It's
Say
got
that
all
again.
sorts of robot-y sounds in it.
Gord, I know what Domo Arigato, Mr. Roboto is. Okay. I just couldn't understand what Justin was saying. For some reason, I can't understand robot speak at all.
My for some reason, and he's lost it now, but we used to have that song in the car on a CD, and my son, who was then, I would probably guess 7, maybe 8, memorized the entire Mr. Roboto song. He could sing the whole thing all the way through. I believe it's now gone. Someday he'll hear the song out of the blue and just be like mesmerized by this strange song he knows all the words to and can't place, right?
Oh my goodness. Okay, well, we got anything else?
What do you mean? You got anything else? What is that? You got anything else?
I'm just
Anything you
standing
wanna
here
say?
acting silly.
What are you? You're a jellyfish?
No, I was going like this. I was dancing. This is my like. I
Who
feel
is there to
awkward.
exterminate? Oh my gosh, I got to do a Dalek. Hang on. Let me go switch back over to robot voice.
Exterminate! Exterminate!
That sounds like a bee.
Exterminate! Exterminate!
Sounds like a bee.
Exterminate! 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 This was
There you go.
Yeah, that's my guy.
That's the right one. Okay.
All right, Blair. I guess that's our show for today.
Yeah, I don't really have much else to talk about.
And there isn't really much going on in the world. The world's such a boring place without sciencey news to talk about.
I'm trying to think what else.
Science!
Trying to think if there's any other cool sciencey news. Let me think. Oh, there was that light wave / particle. Maybe we'll talk about that next week. I kind of thought you would bring that, and then I forgot.
I did. Oh, hang on. I did have it. I did have it, and then for whatever reason, I left it. I didn't bring it after all.
Oh. Yeah, I kind of assumed you would, and so I didn't put it in the show notes, and
The
then
Trick
I
the Light
forgot.
Fantastic story.
An image of light acting as a particle and a wave. For the
Oh,
first time ever.
No. I missed this one. Hang on.
Yeah, maybe we'll talk about it next week. I know Kiki really liked it, so maybe we'll just talk about it next week.
Yeah.
We'll save it. We'll save it for next week.
Okay.
Okay. You want to play with your toy some more, or should we go?
I guess both could happen.
Okay.
Also, that's also
Uh-huh.
happening.
I'm bummed that the mixer didn't make it today, though. Although I think your phone and mic combo worked out pretty good. It was actually hard to distinguish at this end from the real thing. And I am surprised that there wasn't a peacock spider story because they found a new.
They found 2 new species. I'm not huge on reporting on new species found. Like, I'm very interested in it making the rounds on the internet, but honestly, there's not a lot to discuss. It's just like, hey, there's a new species, and that's it. I don't think it's compelling radio, personally, especially because you can't see pictures of them, and that's really what makes the peacock spider amazing, are the pictures. The 2 new species of peacock spider, for those of you watching, their informal names are Sparkle Muffin and Skeletor. So, yeah. So
that's the story in itself.
So we can.
Is this the result of citizen science?
No. But if you see them, they make sense. So let's see.
Really, honey? Like, you could have named a spider species after one of your parents? After your spouse?
Okay, so I'm going to screen share.
Even yourself.
Here's Sparkle Muffin.
Skeletor?
Look at Sparkle Muffin. There's Sparkle Muffin right there. There we go. And then down here... Oh, this article doesn't have it. All right, I have to find Skeletor now. Hold on. I tweeted about it. Let's see. I think it was on... Let's see. Okay. Oh, goodness. I just have to go back to my Twitter again. It's the only way I can find these things. So, Skeletor looks like a skeleton. It's quite impressive. Let's see. 2 new species of parkinson's. There we go. I think the girls are actually super cute, too. They look like the stuffed animal version of a spider. Okay, here's an X picture of Sparkle Muffin. Right here. Bam. Look at him. Look at him doing that. And then here's the girls. Look at them. Oh my god. They're so fuzzy and adorable.
They're so cute.
And then here's Skeletor. Oh.
Wow, he does look like a skeletal outline of what you would imagine spider bones would look like if spiders had bones.
Yeah, look at Skeletor. Totes adorbs. So, and look at Sparkle Muffin. Disco King. Anyway. But you see, it's not really, considering most of the people that enjoy This Week in Science do so orally. Orally?
Audibly. Audibly, dear. Audibly.
Orally?
Audibly. Not orally.
Orally.
Hopefully nobody's taking this show orally.
Orally.
I don't think so. I don't think that's proper usage.
Orally.
No, I think audibly.
No,
maybe.
A-U-R.
But not
A-L-L-Y.
orally.
Orally.
Please do not swallow your iPod while
No.
listening to This Week in Science.
Orally.
No, that's not.
A-U-R-A-L-L-Y.
Orally?
Orally. That's what I said.
That can't be a right word.
All right. How about you screenshot this and put it in your pipe?
McLeod says it's correct. Which means I've been doing most of my narcotics incorrectly. I must next time stick them in my ear.
Orally. With regard to sound or the ear?
Yeah, you use a Q-tip orally?
Yeah. You do.
To cause some confusion.
Oh boy. I am bothered that this GIF of hermit crabs I put on the internet weeks ago, and it just now exploded via Splode. I'm angry about this.
Well,
Sploid. Watch hermit crabs form a line from biggest to smallest to trade shells. This is the exact GIF that I tweeted out like 3 weeks ago, and I was tweeting about this. Bothered.
Pre-trend setter?
Bah. Bah.
Internet predictor?
I'm angered. Okay, anyway.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Well,
So
is that it? Is that the show? Do you have to
think that's
go
a
to bed
wrap.
now or something?
That's a wrap.
All right, minions. We'll see you next week. Make sure to take the show orally.
Yeah.
Not orally. Do not attempt to ingest This Week in Science.
I mean, you could.
No, do not.
Here, right here. Then I thought about where my phone's been, and I got really
Before we
upset.
go, I'm going to switch
Put it
back.
in my mouth. Whoops. Gross. That was gross what I just did. Okay, anyway. Thinking about stories we've done on the show about what's on phones. All right. Good night, everybody. Right, Justin?
Intergalactic planetary.
X-rated material. Night, everybody. Love you. Goodbye.